Hey YouTube, this is Big Bob. This is my first ever YouTube video. I've used YouTube a lot over the years to complete various projects. Always a ton of information out there. I didn't see a ton on this particular subject, so I thought maybe now is the time for me to start contributing. I've been working on a console swap, putting in a full center console, as you see here, into a 2015 F150. I believe it's the same console from like 15 to 20. Maybe some Super Duty stuff fits here and there, but you should probably do your own research on what fits and what doesn't. I got this console for 85 bucks out of a scrapyard. It's not in perfect shape. I'm hoping that some trim restore and stuff will clean a lot of that up, but for 85 bucks, I figured it was pretty good substitute for the jump seat. So this thing was absolutely filthy coming out of the scrapyard, covered in dog hair, covered in dirt, grime. Windows are probably broken out of the truck, so it kind of sitting outside. Did my best to kind of take a first swing getting it cleaned up. I pulled a lot of the pieces off. Long term, I'd like to make a video of this actual swap. There is a ton of information out there, part numbers and stuff scattered across multiple platforms, YouTube, forums, this and that. I'd like to kind of pull all that together and make kind of a full video of how I did my swap in my 2015. You see all my parts sitting here. I really want to get the HVAC to work. It's a big goal to make the rear vents work. I also haven't seen a ton of information on getting this 110 outlet to work in the rear. So I'm gonna try to do that. For this video, I'm just going to stick to this little door here because of the condition of this console. This really gave me a lot of trouble. It was pretty grimy, didn't work at all when I picked it up. I've also seen a lot of stuff online of people losing, I've seen tickets or, whatever it might be, something important, a check maybe that slides underneath here, disappears behind your dash. There's not really a good way to get at it aside from kind of pulling this whole thing out. And then beyond that, how do you actually take this thing apart and clean it and service it, which is what I did. I did not find a lot out there, so put together a short little video here and hopefully show everybody how to do that. So you'll see right out of the gate here, I'm missing kind of a cup holder and stuff. I had this console came out of a truck with a pistol grip shifter or a floor shifter. My truck doesn't have that. I don't like that. I like a column shift. So I actually purchased the other style insert there. It's just not sitting in there. So just ignore that for now, but the process is essentially the same. First thing you'd have to do, there's other videos on this. Mine's obviously, mostly taken apart here, but you pop your lid up and you can pop this trim off around the back here. There's some real stubborn clips on the front that go into the dash. Those are a real pain to wiggle out of there, but it is doable. This whole trim piece then kind of pops up off of here and comes off, and it would reveal the rest of this console. Again, you'd have an insert in here that would look like this. That would be sitting in here. This is held in by little clips too. You just pop those out. Make sure you don't lose those little white clips on there. Those slip off. Without those, it loses all of its holding power. They got a real tendency to kind of fly away on you, so just be careful with those. So once that trim is off, your next step is these T20 screws on each side of this sliding tray. Those are pretty easy to get at. There's other videos out there that show this console in the truck. Obviously mine's not in the truck, so I'm not sure how much access you have in the front of this, but there's some hooks that stick underneath some plastic, I'll show you here in a second, that allow you to kind of remove this whole thing out. The only actual, hardware on it are these two screws up front. Once you get those screws out, you close the door back up. It kind of reveals this mechanism in the back. This is, again, is really tough to illustrate with this thing in the truck, so I hope that other videos can show what you can see in the truck, but the next item you got to pop off of here is this little itty bitty little wire connector. It's just pinched between those clips. That pulls off, and then this pulls off the end here. It's kind of stubborn. It's got like a metal barb on it. You need a pick or something to peel those open. They're real stubborn to get off that plastic. They dig in pretty hard, almost like a fish hook. The other thing is a Christmas tree clip over on this side. Pop that off. That's your sync wire. So that frees that up to get this thing out of here. Again, there's little clips here in the back, so you can actually lift it up in the front, slide it forward, and it comes out. Those there are your little clips for the front. They go in these slots in the front of this very front of the console. They slide in there, and then the whole thing rests down flat. So now I've got this thing sitting on my bench. I'll do my best to film here. This is just my cell phone. Again, this is my first ever YouTube video, so I'm sure I'll get blasted in the comments for my shoddy video work. Doing my best, change my settings from 60 frames to 30 frames, try to get things to smooth out. My phone is really struggling here, but bear with me. I hope this video helps somebody because I certainly messed around with this for a couple minutes because I couldn't find much online about it. The first thing I noticed right away is this little flipper here. This is actually like a little track. There's a pin up underneath there that when this door comes back, it rides in here, and then it hits the back of the track. That's when that door comes forward and it stops. It sits right in this middle part here. And then when you push the door forward for the track to push itself closed again, it actually rides over here, and then it goes back down this track and rides forward. Pretty clever design. I mean, honestly, probably cost them pennies to make, but has some pretty neat functionality, as finicky as it may be. Decent idea. That's certainly not something I would have thought of. So you can pull this thing open. Again, I apologize. I got trying to do this one-handed here. Pull it open. It stays open like it's supposed to. You can see in the front, now that we're up underneath, that's that flipper. See, it doesn't move now because that pin is in there. And then when you pinch this thing, it kicks over. You can see that white thing moving as that door makes its way out. Pretty neat little design. How this thing works is it's spring-loaded on a spring that's wound underneath. You can see it's silver in there. There's a plastic cover over this that you can pop out and clean that spring up. This took me a while to sort out. There's also there's a gear underneath here that rides on this track. I would think that helps to keep things aligned. And it gives it its kind of resistance as that spring pulls, so it doesn't snap open when you press on it. So that gear is real tough to turn. I'm not really sure how that works, but we'll flip this thing over and get a look at that. So the real key here, again around the bottom of this tray, the real key to me being able to get this thing apart and actually clean it and lube it up and do some maintenance on it. It's really nasty inside of there. There's this metal tab here. That's actually a long, like ribbon piece of steel that's wound up on a spool in here. And when that door slides back and forth, it winds and rewinds onto that spool. There's actually a little hook here that I think is designed for the assembly of this thing. But to get this thing apart, I just grab my needle nose. You see there's still dog hair on there. Grab this spring and pull it off the little hook it's sitting on. There's a little tang that it's sitting on. It's hard to catch, but there's a little plastic tang it's sitting on, and that is what pulls that door back and forth. So you grab onto the end of this thing real tight with a needle nose, pull that off. And it'll retract all the way in. The last step here is right where these rubber doodads are. There's a stop underneath. Right in here, you peel that apart on both sides. Lift up the bottom and pull up the lid and lift it over that stop. Those are what the stops look like on both sides. And once you do that, the whole works comes apart. So here's your ribbon here that coiled up when you pulled that out, and then this gear, which it's kind of difficult to spin. It's got like built-in resistance. I'm not really sure how they do that. It's just a cheap plastic gear. Maybe there's just some rubber in there or something. But that gear mates up with this little rack on the door side and rides along here. That's what kind of gives it that like cushy motion. So the spring provides the power, and little gear provides the resistance, and then this little flipper that we looked at earlier, that's what gives you the actual action of pressing it to have it hold open, pressing it to have it close up. All that stuff kind of works in combination to make this thing function. So mine was disgusting. Inside of the edges of the door are these little C-shaped sliders on both sides. I had to clean those up. Those C-shaped sliders go into that groove on both sides of this thing. And that is what the actual sliding is. So I cleaned out the grooves, I cleaned out the C-shapes on this side, and then I cleaned off these surfaces here. I used some dry lube once it was all nice and clean to make sure that was all nice and slick for that to slide on. I thought it would be smoother. Once it was clean, it's still kind of noisy, but I think it's just the plastic on plastic. There's not really any moving parts besides this gear, which makes no noise, and the spring itself, which I guess could maybe make some noise, but it's pretty smooth now. It works good. Pretty easy to get apart. Again, T20 Torx, needle nose pliers, and you can get this thing apart. I will show a quick little shot here of how to get it back together using this little tang on the end, which I think is here intentionally to allow for easy assembly of this, because without it, I'm not sure how you would do it without a real long pick. So I'll have another shot here of putting it back together. One other thing of note here is this little flipper. This can get you, this is actually helps in holding it open as well. I'm not really sure exactly what's catching on that. There's something on the lid I'm sure of that flips this thing up. But when you have this thing out of the console and you're tossing it around and you're looking at it and you're working on trying to get it apart, this can flip up and actually bind up with the lid. All you gotta do is stick a screwdriver or a pick or something in here and just flip it down like this, and then it'll slide freely again. It's just part of the mechanism. There's nothing to it. There's no springs or anything. It's just a piece of plastic on a swivel. But it can, when you're kind of wheeling this thing around and flipping it up and turning it, it can flip up like this, and it can bind up and make you think that your door is stuck, but you just got to flip that down. So to reassemble, I grabbed this ribbon with my needle nose again, and I stretched it all the way out here and clipped it on this tang, which we've showed a couple times here. That has to be for the assembly process at Ford. Without it, the door covers all this, and you would need to reach in there with some kind of pick and slide this all the way out and hook it on the door. I'm not sure what else that would be for other than this. Makes it pretty easy, so props to them. Most of the time YouTube folks are giving car manufacturers and their engineers a hard time. This thing certainly isn't the world's greatest mechanism, but at least they thought of this, I'm certain, for their own assembly purposes, but nonetheless it's there for us to use, and it certainly makes this easy. So last step is to put the door on. That's got my console still sitting here. So this is how it orients in there. Again, the screws at the kind of towards the back there. That's going to be in line with the door. The door sits like that. Just important for how it slides on. The little tang for the spring is here. So once we slide this door on and it's sitting in here, we'll be able to pop that spring off of this lower perch with our needle nose and clip it on the top, and we'll be right back to where we were with this door operational. Getting the door itself on, again, these C channels on the edge is where that slides in. There's a taper or a chamfer on the leading edge of this to aid in how the door goes on. I'm not going to be able to put the door on and film. It's pretty easy to get on. Make sure that, you have it oriented right. It should be just like this, and you can work it down past the spring. You'll have to pull it open again to get it past those hard stops in the front here, and then you can hook the spring back on. So it turns out I can do it while filming. So you just kind of rest this whole works in here, have it all upside down right now, and then work this in. It's riding in those slots on both sides. And again, these slots these stoppers, in the front, you got to lift the door over that, and then we'll be fully on the track. That I know I can't do without or while filming. Figured I'd at least show a shot of this. So this is kind of on top of the stops on both sides. We're sitting on it. I'm sure if I just push these, it rides over the stops, and we're back together. Not overly complicated. It goes pretty easy. Don't force it. Again, it's all plastic. It'll go pretty smooth. The last step here is just to rehook up the spring. So it's a little challenging to see here, but our ribbon is hooked on our kind of tang that we pulled it out to. Below it right here is the actual lid spot for it. So you just need to grab this little needle nose and move it down here to where it started. Again, I apologize. I'm kind of a one-man band here. Had a cameraman briefly, but I lost him. So I'm going to do this off camera. I will show it after, but it's literally just grab the end of this like we did earlier, pull it out slightly, hook it on this bottom tab. Should look like that when you're done. This is the upper tab. Again, up here is where we hooked it on for assembly purposes, and the lower tab is the door itself. When you hook it on and let it go, the door might close. No big deal. You're essentially back to operating right now. So if you were to press the door in, it will function like it's supposed to. Once your spring is hooked up, you can put this thing back in your console using these tabs. Slide it on, put your 2 screws in. Don't forget about your switch here for your little interior light, and obviously this little Christmas tree plug. make sure everything was tied up how it was so nothing binds up when that's moving. Once you get that all put back together, it should work like it's supposed to, hopefully better than new or as good as new. So that's all I have to show for this video. I appreciate you watching it. Again, it's my first YouTube video. I apologize for the camera work. It's just my two hands and a cell phone. I decided to make this because I looked into these particular pieces. They're $300–400. They're super expensive. So I figured I'd take it apart, see what I could learn, and decided to share that with YouTube to hopefully help some people out. So I wouldn't be too intimidated by it. It comes out easy. I would say, again, I have the benefit of having this console on my bench here. If it's in the truck, I don't really know how difficult this is, particularly with some of these wirings and stuff in the very front there. But even then, the console and the trim is not overly difficult to get out and access. Having this thing work right, I think, is important. So it's all part of a larger project here, which I will try to make a video for, my overall console swap. I mentioned that at the beginning. A lot of pieces, a lot of information there. Probably like a 30–40% chance I make that video. But I hope this is helpful, and thanks for watching.